With the nature of comic book writing and the way different teams cycle in and out of an ongoing narrative, you're gonna get storylines that ebb and flow in terms of quality. But when you sign up as a villain in the Batman universe and you're a hit, you're gonna keep popping up whether it's entirely appropriate or not. That's the case with Hush, a villain who was introduced in his own dedicated storyline in 2002, with a very specific vendetta against Bruce Wayne that stems from their time as childhood friends. His real name is Thomas Elliot, and he was actually jealous of the fact that Bruce's parents were killed, because earlier in his life he cut the brakes in his parents' car attempting to kill them, so he could inherit their fortune for himself. After resenting him for decades, he finally enacted his revenge, in a plot that manipulated several heroes and villains, exhausting Batman and driving him close to murder by reopening several wounds from the past. His plan was halted when Harvey Dent betrayed and put 2 bullets in him, causing him to fall off the bridge his parents had the car crash he orchestrated, where he disappeared into the water below. That's where that storyline ended, but ever since, he's popped up with various levels of importance with vastly different characterization. Unfortunately, the first time he reappeared was in a series called Gotham Knights in early 2004. And this is some of the worst Hush content we're gonna cover along this journey, though it's also some of the funniest. So after disappearing, Hush apparently went on to plot his revenge in a swamp where he works out all day, chopping wood and murdering any hillbillies who stumble upon his cabin. Once he's ready, he burns the cabin down so there isn't any evidence left behind. This plan involves threatening the Riddler in prison so that he'll request a transfer from the Joker, and once he's moving, Hush intercepts the convoy with missiles. Earlier, he planted a bomb in a hospital to distract Batman while he deals with the Riddler. He chases him across some rooftops, even executing a cop who tries to stop them. I just want to say, I don't know why Hush wants revenge on the Riddler in the first place. Also, it's hard to even see this as the same Riddler from the original Hush story when he looks so much younger here. Riddler didn't really betray Hush before, he just explained what Hush's whole deal was after his plan already failed. Maybe he's embarrassed he told Batman his name came from a nursery rhyme. Well, he first asks for the location of the Lazarus pit the Riddler used to cure his brain tumor, which I could see Hush having some kind of use for. The whole time, Hush is narrating with some pseudo-intellectual babble about the 5 basic human emotions to sound smart. But he's really messing the Riddler up, slamming his head into a fan, breaking one of his fingers, and apparently knocking several of his teeth out. Hush puts himself on a pedestal above all of the other villains in Gotham, stating that they're all just playing a game with Batman, trying and failing over and over again, but the same rules don't apply to him. Big talk from a guy who's already tried and failed to beat Batman and is now on attempt 2. He gives the Riddler the option to jump off the roof or get his other 9 fingers broken. Now, that looks like a pretty far drop, which would probably kill you, so even though it would suck, you'd have to go with the broken fingers option, right? Well, on the next page we see him flying through the air, crashing through a glass skylight, and slamming into a table. Then, Hush jumps down after him, giving us our first real look at his updated design. He no longer wears a shirt, instead choosing to wear tattered bandages all over his body alongside his head now. We can see he has scars all over his face and body, which was never implied to be a thing before. But who knows, maybe he was mauled by a shark when he fell into the water the last time we saw him. Somehow, that crash landing didn't kill the Riddler, and Hush drags him outside, where he strikes a sick pose and proclaims that it's good to be back. This feels wildly out of character compared to how he acted in the original. Always operating in the shadows, quoting Aristotle, and only getting directly involved to put the final nail in Bruce Wayne's coffin. The man his entire persona and motivation was based around. Then the Joker walks up, coming to save the Riddler from being killed. Hush claims the Riddler used the Joker just as much as he used him. But I still don't see how Hush was used in the previous storyline at all. It was Harvey Dent or Two-Face that foiled his original plans, so you'd think he'd be hunting him down for revenge instead. None of that was the Riddler screwing him over, and he was even imprisoned himself at the end of the story while Hush got away. The story really hyped up Hush's return here, making it seem like he had this amazing plan and was a force to be reckoned with. But the Joker's gang beat him into the pavement and leave him in a pool of blood in the middle of the street. When Batman realizes Hush has returned, he decides to dig up his grave and check his coffin. This is so strange because why did he wait until now to do this? The fact that Thomas Elliot faked his own death is not news to him, and even if he thought he died from being shot and falling from the bridge later in the story, his grave has nothing to do with that. It isn't like his body would appear back in the coffin that was falsely buried earlier in the story. The coffin has a newspaper in it from the day Tommy tried to kill his own parents, resulting in the death of his father, reminding Bruce of Hush's reasons for wanting revenge. Tommy wanted both of his parents dead, but Bruce's father managed to save his mother, keeping him from obtaining his family's fortune early like he'd wanted. So, did Hush dig up his own grave just to place this newspaper inside? Or was it always there and nobody realized they were just burying a newspaper? Maybe they somehow buried Clayface, who was pretending to be Tommy's corpse, and he was keeping that newspaper on him to leave in the coffin, knowing it would eventually be found and the payoff would be great. Hush scrapes himself off the floor and goes to see a guy named the Tailor, who makes costumes and equipment for anyone who pays. But all he tells Hush is to go team up with another villain named Prometheus. This guy is a whole can of worms, since there are actually several villains who have used this identity. I'm not sure if this is a retcon based on how incompetent this era of Prometheus was, but it's later revealed that this is a protege of the previous Prometheus who took on the mantle. This is legitimately this version of the character's first appearance, but it will not impress. His main gimmick is his helmet, which can use discs to load combat data of his adversaries directly into his brain. I don't think he ever uses this ability in this storyline even once. The first thing he does is get shot repeatedly through the arms by Green Arrow. He almost gets shot in the head, but Hush saves him and moves him slightly out of the way so he only gets shot in the thigh. Ouch, this team-up is not looking promising from the get-go. After causing Green Arrow to lose balance, resulting in the death of a cop, the two of them manage to escape to a motel where Hush has to perform ad hoc surgery on Prometheus's wounds. This is such a long, drawn-out, dramatic sequence, but it's all in service of Hush getting a single ally that we've already seen get owned and accomplish nothing. Batman has a nightmare where he's chasing after Hush and gets his zipline cut. Meanwhile, Hush and Prometheus move into an abandoned hospital together. From there, they launch their revenge against the Joker as he transports the Riddler to a hideout. Prometheus does kill a good deal of Joker's gang members, allowing Hush to get in there and strike another sick pose. Then, the two of them take out everyone else, leaving Joker for Hush to handle personally. He returns the favor for the beating he received earlier, knocking him all over the place, even throwing a manhole cover at him, which just seems unnecessary. But it lets Joker conveniently slip away into the sewer to avoid death. They let him go because they need to find the Riddler, but Batman shows up. Hush starts roasting the poem Bruce read at his funeral, and really, the whole exchange seems way too cordial for how their last encounter went down. The two of them escape from Batman, not really accomplishing anything, all things considered, except for beating up the Joker, which must have been satisfying. From there, the overarching storyline of the Batman comics moves into an event called War Games. To get the full grasp of things, you'd need to be reading all of the different comics set in and around Gotham. Luckily, Hush only exists in this storyline to repeatedly tell everyone that he wants nothing to do with this giant gang war. Black Mask attempts to recruit him, but Hush says he has no interest in running Gotham, just ruining Batman. He makes this even clearer when he bursts into the Penguin's office and tells him he really doesn't want to be recruited into this gang war. He flips out when the Penguin implies he might know where the Riddler is. But again, I really don't understand why he has such a vendetta against him. Just a heads up, he never confronts the Riddler again. Unless this ends up happening in any of his appearances post New 52 or Rebirth, which I haven't gotten to yet. The only other time Hush appears in this arc is in Batgirl number 56, where he confronts Black Mask again. If they agree to stay out of each other's way, Hush will tell him the location of the Batcave. It makes sense for him to know this, considering he had a tracking device in Batman's head. But he lies and sends Black Mask and his army to the hideout of the Oracle. This ends up getting her entire clock tower base destroyed, which works out in Hush's favor. He doesn't show up again for a few issues until he decides to pull off a really strange scheme. He hires a bunch of random gangsters to kidnap Alfred so that he'll call Batman and chase after them. While he's gone, they actually kidnap Alfred for real and snipe the gangsters from a rooftop before they can spill the beans. Back at Hush's hideout, he has Prometheus kill everyone involved when they start asking for more money. Alfred almost gets away during the commotion, but they catch him right after he swipes a knife he finds. They take him to a boat, and he uses the knife to escape, to his surprise, coming across the normal Tommy Elliot chained up. This is a mind-bender because none of them want it to be true that Hush was Bruce's childhood friend. It's all but confirmed at this point, but because they've never actually shown Hush take off the bandages and make his true appearance known, there's always the possibility that some kind of trickery could be afoot. So Alfred is led to believe Hush is some kind of imposter, while the real Tommy has been kidnapped and hidden this whole time and isn't actually a villain. Hush shows up and starts shooting at him, but Batman arrives and throws a bomb down which knocks Alfred into the water. Batman makes the choice to save him instead of pursuing Hush, who then goes to check on the captured Tommy. Being the mastermind that he is, he of course left that knife for Alfred to steal, knowing he would use it to escape and find Tommy. He even reveals he wasn't firing real bullets because he wanted Alfred to report what he saw to Batman. The issue is that when Alfred hit the water, he received a concussion, causing him to lose his memory of ever seeing this chained up Tommy. While the story wasn't amazing when Hush first appeared, this whole plan and everything that happens after it is such a mess. Hush claims Batman got to the boat too soon, meaning someone must have helped him. At the same time, he claims he left a bullet casing with a planted fingerprint on purpose, knowing Batman would find it. Well, he used that fingerprint to find an address, and there he finds written on a pizza box the location of Hush's hideout. Okay, so if Hush wanted him to go there and find the address, then how is he concluding someone helped him? Well, Batman suddenly starts talking to Poison Ivy because he notices a plant in the corner of the room. Alright, but maybe because the text on the pizza box is green, it's actually implying she wrote the location there to screw over Hush. Except she claims she doesn't want to help him and doesn't know where Alfred is. So which is it? Was she helping him with the text or not? This whole sequence is confusingly presented, because it almost looks like Ivy is in the same room as the plant, since the same blue background is used as he begins questioning her. But as he jumps away, they're clearly in a plant-covered balcony. So Hush goes to Ivy, somehow knowing she's the one who helped Batman, and starts asking why she interfered with his plans. But how did she interfere if he wanted Batman to find the apartment and make it to the boat to save Alfred? She claims she had her reasons to help Batman, except she said she didn't want to help and didn't know where Alfred was. Now, Hush is kind of a side element of this main storyline involving Poison Ivy. Basically, she had a tribe of orphaned children running around with her in the park before the police took them away. This evil organization is now kidnapping those kids because of their exposure to her, and trying to turn them into new versions of Poison Ivy they can use as weapons. These failed experiments end up dead, and Ivy blames herself, thinking their exposure to her is causing their deaths. So she pursues turning herself back into a normal human again with the help of Bruce Wayne. Now, for some reason, Hush really wants her to believe her mind control powers have no effect on him. To do this, he's injecting himself with some kind of serum, and putting himself in a box full of her plants to expose himself to her powers until he's immune. Suddenly, Alfred's vouching for Ivy, stating that she can't be the reason these kids are dying. Because on the boat, she seemed sad and it wouldn't be in her nature. What boat? The one you were tied up in? She was never shown to be on that boat. There's an asterisk here telling us to go back to issue 60, and I can assure you she wasn't on that boat. Hush helps Ivy protect one of the runaway orphans by shooting a bunch of cops pursuing them. When confronting her, he claims he really enjoyed their previous talk, and asks her to kiss him to prove her powers can't kill him. When she does and he resists her control, she wants to know how he did it. Since she wants to turn human again, he might be able to help her, but he declines, claiming that she's making a mistake and that they should be together since he's the only one unaffected by her powers. I keep forgetting that Hush and Ivy did work together directly in the original storyline he debuted in, because this version of him feels like a totally different character. I'm genuinely not sure if Hush actually likes her because she's an outcast like him, or just wants to manipulate and use her for his own goals. Either way, who the hell wanted Hush to be in a romantic context? Especially this version of him who's covered in raggedy loose bandages, with a leathery face appearing to be covered in burns or scars. I think he's genuine because he punches Prometheus when he starts saying this is a waste of time. Hush claims she's someone he feels he can trust. But he gets pissed when he learns she started working with Bruce to find a cure for her condition. Hush immediately goes to beat him up in a parking lot. Well, if it was always that easy, what took you so long? Bruce barely puts up a fight, and Hush says he'll kill him if he hurts Poison Ivy. So what happened to trying to kill Bruce? He has always known Bruce is Batman, and he has a grudge against Bruce, not the Batman persona. Now he's appointed himself as an overprotective boyfriend, roughing up people who get too close to her. In addition, he sows doubt in their relationship by convincing Ivy that Bruce is only helping her to eliminate one of his villains, because he's actually Batman. Again, Hush has always known Batman's identity, but it isn't something he's ever felt the need to give away because it gives him an upper hand. But also, he hates the man, not his secret identity. But I guess it's something he'll easily give away if it means keeping a woman to himself. Bruce is immediately able to convince her he isn't Batman by staging an appearance with Alfred dressed in one of his batsuits. Hush continues to try to convince her she isn't the one who got those kids killed, and he's actually right, but she doesn't believe him. She refuses to leave with him, even shedding a tear. And he says that he was wrong because she can hurt him after all. Who knew Hush was so romantic? Bruce succeeds in turning Ivy back into her original human form, but only then does she learn of the evil organization that's been experimenting on the orphans from her tribe. So she immediately wants to turn back into her plant form, but Bruce won't help her, meaning she has to go crawling back to Hush. She convinces him to find a working lab so they can perform the transformation. When they get there, the guy who experimented on the kids shows up to ask Ivy to join them. Of course they decline, with Hush knocking the guy around. When one of the new recreations of Ivy shows up, all it takes is Hush grabbing them to render them helpless. Whatever, they're both taken care of, with Hush shooting the girl out the window. Now, they resume their original plan when Batman shows up and tries to convince her that the operation is too dangerous. He's correct because the injection starts killing her, and Batman pleads for Hush to save her since he's a doctor. He has this look on his face like he's considering what to do. Then on the next page we see them looking down at her gravestone because he actually let her die. That was so abrupt. When I got to the next issue, I was confused how the story was moving on to something completely different. Why did Hush let her die if he wanted the transformation to succeed? Was annoying Batman really more important than the woman he was trying to get with this entire arc? You know, you stick with something for so long, you don't expect it to not even try to deliver a satisfying ending. The next issue begins with Hush launching Prometheus out a window because he was talking shit about Ivy. He cuts off their agreement and says he wants him out of the city, but they're attacked by mercenaries working for Talia al Ghul and Deathstroke. They want to capture Prometheus, so Hush abandons him, but gets captured himself since they need his help to cure some kind of illness Prometheus is suddenly dying from. In the last issue, when Hush launched one of the experimental orphans out the window, she was grabbed by Prometheus, who she infected. Okay, so she could do this with a simple cut, yet Hush was holding her hostage against his body with no issue before he shot her. Apparently, Prometheus knows the location of some key that can unlock time and space, and they want to know the location. They start going into Prometheus's backstory, how he trained in Shambhala and killed a weird monster to get this key. And it's like, we're talking about the same guy here? Because he has not shown himself to be someone with a legendary backstory like this. I looked into it, and apparently this is the backstory of the real Prometheus, who later comes back and kills this imposter version and takes his key back. This is another thing that makes this feel like a retcon based on how lame this era of Prometheus was. Since why would we flash to a fake backstory for him? Especially since it isn't like he's narrating it to the people in the room and just lying about it. Makes a lot more sense that Hush was originally sent to team up with Prometheus, since the real version of the character goes on to dominate a ton of Justice League members in a much maligned storyline called Cry for Justice. But it's crazy to think Hush has accidentally been running around with this third-rate imposter this whole time, and now has to save him on the operating table for the second time. He just looks absurd doing this medical procedure while shirtless with these loose bandages all over his body. After stabilizing him, Hush takes Talia hostage and makes his escape. They get into a small scuffle where he launches her into a window, then pulls out a gun he's been hiding the entire time in his sock. I have no clue what this next bit is meant to convey. He pulls out a vial and says it contains the contagion that paralyzed Prometheus and the antidote. Is he giving it to her so she'll leave him alone? Is he just being a dick by showing it off but not giving it to her? Did he just make this, or did he create it beforehand and was secretly the one who infected Prometheus with it in the first place? He says this is the second time he saves his life. So it sounds like he did help him, but what would be the point of showing this off if they didn't need it anymore? Or maybe he's threatening to expose her to it to keep her away from him? I have no idea, since this issue is trying to wrap things up as fast as possible so it can end and move on from this weird subplot. Let's forget any of that ever happened, because in the next issue, we follow a completely different story. Some cameraman for porn ends up recording Bruce Wayne fighting Hush, who has his original design and not the raggedy shirtless look he's been rocking during this entire run. The cameraman compares the footage to his friend's collection of Batman footage and deduces that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He tries to blackmail Bruce with this footage, but when Alfred is sent to give him the money he asked for, he murders him in his apartment instead. Well, that seems out of character, but don't worry, they explain it. The rabbit hole we're about to go down is first set up in Catwoman issue 44 and 45 from 2005, where Hush makes an appearance. After watching Catwoman stop some bad guys, he approaches her and offers to help pull some strings to decrease the crime in her area of town. But in exchange, he wants her to break into Star Labs and steal a canister for him. She screws things up and a Clayface is released from the canister, which then escapes into the city. Annoyed, Hush comes to shoot her, and after being beaten, he reveals he made some calls and put the word out that she was the only one protecting her area of the city, causing a ton of criminals to come over and start wreaking havoc there. Hush doesn't have a role in this beyond that setup, but the fact that he was trying to obtain a variant of Clayface does become relevant back in the Gotham Knights comic. Now, remember that whole thing about Thomas Elliot being held prisoner on a boat? They're finally gonna follow up on that plot thread. But when they show that moment again, the design of the place looks completely different. Alfred lost his memory of the event either from Batman throwing an explosive or his impact with the water. I legitimately think they just didn't know how they were gonna justify Hush and Tommy being two different people, and instead just put that moment in thinking it would blow people's minds and that they could figure out a reason later. Because of that, we need to jump back 6 months in the past, where there's a fire in a warehouse which has a bunch of illegal chemicals left in it. Then, Hush is planning the kidnapping of Alfred, which we saw play out several issues ago. I'm not sure why he just so happens to be planning this right above those illegal chemicals, but somehow he finds a new form of Clayface here, which can attach itself and replicate the DNA of anything it comes into contact with. Just to be clear, this is not the same Clayface that escaped in that Catwoman comic I just described. One of the firefighters from earlier apparently got some of this on him and was taken over by a Clayface copy who continued living the original guy's life, except with the addition of drinking while driving, abusing his wife, and murdering prostitutes. Hush finds this guy as he's about to jump off a bridge, but he's able to strike a sick pose which convinces the Clayface to join him. So Alfred eventually regains his memory of seeing Tommy on the boat and goes to tell Bruce about it. But as they go back to check the boat where he says he saw Tommy, he suddenly gets lightheaded. We keep cutting back to the past where Hush is trying to convince this guy he's a Clayface, smacking him around until he eventually transforms into a monster. As he does this, he rips Hush's bandages, revealing his face is completely normal. This is one of the only times we see Thomas Elliot's original appearance from when we first saw him in his debut storyline. But apparently under there, he's looked completely normal this whole time. This is another instance where I don't think they knew what they wanted to do with him and his appearance, because when he first returns, his face is clearly cut up and scarred alongside the rest of his body. He definitely looks disfigured in some way, whether it was from his escape after being shot by Harvey Dent or self-inflicted out of anger. This calls his use of bandages into question even more, since the whole point of them was to conceal his identity from Bruce. If everyone knows Hush is Tommy and his face looks exactly the same as it did before, why is he hiding it? This Clayface agrees to pose as a fake Tommy to trick Alfred into thinking Hush is a separate person. The issue is Alfred lost his memory of the situation, so that didn't go anywhere. By the time he remembered, it was so long after that they easily scanned the boat and figured out the Tommy he saw was a Clayface. He goes to beat up Hush, who's just swaggering along a rooftop like it's nothing. But then, to his surprise, his grappling hook is cut by Alfred. In a story involving Clayface, is this really supposed to shock us? Turns out this isn't just Clayface pretending to be him. He was temporarily compelled to cut the line because he's turning into a Clayface himself. While on the boat, Hush had infected him with a sample of the same thing that transformed the firefighter earlier. He also had that Clayface kill that cameraman earlier, just to leave Bruce Wayne's wallet there to frame them both. Now, Hush is acquiring samples of the other known Clayface variants to find a cure for the new Clayface he's teamed up with, but also because his new goal is to acquire the powers of a Clayface without losing his own mind. The older Clayfaces consume and take over their hosts, but this new guy's Clayface DNA coexists with his original human DNA. Apparently, the trade-off is a much shorter lifespan, and he, alongside the infected Alfred, are gonna die soon, unless Hush can find a cure using a sample from the last Clayface held in Arkham Asylum. I just want to say, this might be the most convoluted plotline I've ever attempted to explain on this channel before. Hush kidnaps the family of the Clayface he was working with to force him to help him trick Batman into getting the sample from the asylum for them. In the chaos, Hush betrays his ally and extracts 3 samples of the last Clayface so he can use them to turn himself into a Clayface. I just have to re-emphasize that that's really his plan now. The 3 of them play hot potato with the samples, since Batman wants one for Alfred and the Clayface doesn't want either of them to get a piece of him. The disingenuous storytelling here is just annoying me at this point. Hush's extraction gun clearly shows it holds 3 vials. They break 2 of them and then get launched into the forest, where Hush is holding the last one. Then suddenly, the Clayface Hush betrayed is shown dying in the woods, holding another vial which he gives to Batman. It isn't shown that he somehow got it out of Hush's hands, or was pretending to be Hush the whole time, and transformed back to his normal form in the smoke. As one final act of repentance, the Clayface dies while changing his fingerprints to Alfred's, so that he can take the fall for the murder of that cameraman while Alfred is cleared of any involvement. Just to be clear, the Clayface did kill that cameraman and that prostitute, alongside the drunk driving and hitting his wife. So I hope the fact that they're crying over a picture of him is meant to imply we miss our old dad before he was fused with a Clayface, and not, oh, it's so sad we lost such an honorable Clayface. That was a god-awful storyline, but we only have 2 more issues to worry about in Gotham Knights. So the Joker has been gone ever since he was beaten up in the streets by Hush, but he finally decides to make his return. Now, I don't even want to get into the tasteless trip down memory lane he went on, revisiting and retconning moments of the Killing Joke. But now, aided by a flock of birds he now commands, he has a new plan to sabotage Wayne Tech brand pacemakers. Batman thinks Hush is behind this, but he denies it. And he isn't the kind of guy to pass up taking credit for something if he really was behind it. Joker uses his flock of birds to drop bombs containing sleep gas on Hush, which knocks him out. He wakes up confused and goes to find Joker in a club. Turns out he was actually asleep for 3 weeks while Joker put a pacemaker in his heart. Now Joker can trigger a heart attack in him with the push of a button, which he tests out. Hush runs away and takes an x-ray of himself, where he finds that the pacemaker was placed through his femoral artery, which is why he didn't notice a chest scar. Is this possible? Can you put a pacemaker in someone's heart through their leg? This confuses everyone I describe it to, but he does indeed go to start cutting his leg open to try to remove it. But the Joker shows up to give him another heart attack, enjoying being able to torture Hush anytime he wants. He's so defeated by this that he crawls back to Bruce Wayne's mansion, which attempts to draw a visual parallel to the moment Tommy came to their door in the rain after his parents' car crash. It's so funny that Hush knows Bruce Wayne is Batman and he can just show up to his house whenever he wants, even though he's been role-playing as a supervillain for years now. Bruce agrees to help him remove the pacemaker, but only using the in-house medical team at Arkham Asylum, where he wants him to remain afterwards. They complete the surgery and Hush immediately escapes again, screaming into the sky as Batman tells him to get back to Arkham. Hush starts acting like he's some kind of anti-hero, asking Batman to let him kill the Joker for the greater good, which would be a win-win since the blood wouldn't be on his hands. Batman reveals that he lied earlier and they never actually removed his pacemaker. Then the Joker arrives and we see Hush beg for Batman's help, as he considers whether he should just let these two villains kill each other. This is the saddest Hush we've seen so far, as he screams, "You cannot leave me here." This isn't great writing or anything, but I will say I am enjoying it more than that Clayface storyline. But this is the last issue of Gotham Knights. That's right, it was cancelled in the middle of this storyline, after it was decided that all of DC's comics would jump 1 year into the future after the conclusion of the event storyline Infinite Crisis. As much as I'd love to pretend every single part of this comic's run involving Hush never happened, this final moment was directly acknowledged during Paul Dini's run of the comics, when he continued Hush's storyline in the much higher regarded Heart of Hush. I'm gonna continue with Paul Dini's Hush storylines in a follow-up video, but just to give everyone closure here, it's shown that he tackled the Joker off the edge of the building and wrestled the button controlling his pacemaker away from him. Then, as he researched how to remove it, he learned so much about the human heart that it inspired his next plot, which puts all of his weird little schemes in this comic series to shame, and in a lot of ways catapults him to a higher echelon of villains. Until then, the character continued to flounder for a few years before he got a second wind of sorts with the Heart of Hush storyline in 2008. But that didn't stop him from popping up in a few random places that we can kinda skim through. First off, he made a few cameos, one in Detective Comics number 808 from 2005, where we see a flashback of Hush injecting Killer Croc with the virus he used in the original Hush storyline. Thomas Elliott makes a brief appearance in an alternate timeline in issue 17 of the series Superman Batman from 2005. Here we get to see a normal relationship between him and Bruce, where neither of them grew up to don their alternate identities. Then there was something called Batman Villains Secret Files and Origins 2005, which alongside having bios on various antagonists also had a few stories within. One was called Strangers in Paradise, which shows Black Mask assessing the current hierarchy of power in the Gotham underworld. This takes place after the whole War Games storyline where Black Mask had tried to recruit Hush. Basically, this whole thing puts Hush on a pedestal and goes over all of his greatest hits so far. Fixing Harvey Dent's face, using the Riddler, beating up Joker in the streets, saving Prometheus, and letting Poison Ivy die. Black Mask acts like Hush is his most formidable foe who shaped the criminal underworld into a new form, when really it felt like he was just stumbling around. This whole thing is an interesting microcosm because they're really trying to hype up a lot of bad ideas that get undone moving forward. The same guy who wrote this chapter, Bruce Jones, went on to write a 5-issue miniseries on Man-Bat in 2006, which is a direct follow-up to what was set up here. I believe these are the only two appearances of an assistant of Black Mask named Mr. Sutabi, and it also features the same underground hideout known as the War Room, full of masks made to look like his enemies. All that build-up for the idea that Hush and Black Mask would clash was meant to lead into this Man-Bat story, where Hush surprisingly ends up being the main antagonist. He's chilling in a hotel while surveilling Black Mask and trying to figure out a way to get at him. When he hears Man-Bat is out there committing murders, he comes up with a plan to turn some other villain named Murmur into a copycat killer. He has Murmur kill additional people in ways that mess with Black Mask's business, intending to lure him out of hiding. They light Black Mask's assistant Sutabi on fire and then follow him back to their hideout, where Hush proceeds to kill all of the ladies Black Mask has with him. He leaves Black Mask knocked out as bait for Batman and then fakes his own death, making it look like Black Mask tortured him to death. Then he corners Batman, claiming all of this was really to get at him. This feels like the most direct attempt to attack Bruce Wayne himself since the original Hush storyline from 2002. But it's funny that it takes place in a Man-Bat comic. Seems like a lot of effort when he was so casually bumping into him in all of those Gotham Knights storylines. And he even calls his own plan convoluted. You'd think after all of that he'd bring more than a gun with him like the first time. But no, he's just gonna shoot Batman again. Turns out that leads to his downfall because lead actually powers up Man-Bat, and after he shoots the creature, it comes back and carries Hush into the sky. And drops him in a river, I guess. They don't actually show it. This was one of the weirder inclusions of Hush, where it felt like they just used him as a surrogate mastermind because they needed someone to fill the role. While this story does make some weird choices, I still think I prefer the way Hush is written here than his run in Gotham Knights. At least he went back to his original design, and the robe looks pretty cool yet funny on him. Though it does make you question once more why he's still sticking with the bandages around his head. At this point in the overarching Batman narrative, Jason Todd has been revived and is running around as Red Hood. In the last video, I mentioned they decided to retcon the fake-out with the Clayface version of Jason Todd from the original Hush storyline, by making it the real Jason for the first half of the fight. This was shown in Batman Annual 25 from 2006, where Jason contacts Hush because he's heard he's trying to beat Batman and wants a shot at him too. So we see that it really was Jason fighting Batman in the graveyard, until he runs off and tags Clayface in for the second half of the fight. I already explained how this change kind of robs this moment of its emotional resonance and intended message. But it also makes Hush seem less clever as a strategist. If he needed the real Jason Todd to pop up and give him the idea to use his death as an angle to get at Batman. They double down on this retcon in Red Hood: The Lost Days number 6 from 2010, where they show more of Hush and Jason's first meeting. This time, we see Jason as the one who confirms Batman's secret identity, after the Riddler had claimed to have figured it out. I don't mind this small expansion, since if we're already accepting Jason's involvement in the original story, it would make sense that Hush would want some kind of confirmation that Batman really was Bruce Wayne before believing the Riddler completely. With regards to Gotham Knights and all of these other miscellaneous appearances, they're just a continuous string of poorly conceived ideas. He was popular, so they wanted to include him in things, but there was very little established about his personality once his good guy Thomas Elliot persona was dropped at the end of his original appearance. There's no real vision for the character here, but they use him for whatever generic storyline they think he can slot into. Gotham Knights was a far more sleazy interpretation of the character, not helped by his grimy, unappealing redesign. Are those going between his legs like he's wearing bandages for underwear? Hush doesn't feel like a character who should be beefing, partnering up, and getting romantically involved with random other characters like he does here. He should be solely focused on plotting his revenge against Bruce Wayne, but the stakes feel so much lower as these two repeatedly come into contact with each other in ways that no longer feel like life or death situations. Nothing about these various appearances elevate Hush as a character, give him any more depth, or expand his backstory. He's just a loud, angry guy who uses brutality to get what he wants, unlike his more manipulative, hands-off approach he originally used. I'll save some of his future appearances for the third video on Hush, since they tie more into that final crisis era of the comics. Everything I've covered today has paled in comparison to this character's first outing, which wasn't perfect either, but you needed to see how things got so much worse before they got better.